It is not a hard and fast rule in any Renaissance play that all lines will always be in perfect iambic pentameter. This is not the way the rhythm works. That's a good analogy, perhaps, is the time signature of a song. It's the drummer who knows the basic beat, but will vary it. Might speed up, might slow down, but returns to that basic beat frequently enough that the rhythm is reestablished, right? You look at that lovely speech. This is just the opening, the prologue, right? Not marching now in fields of Trasimene. No one really talks that way. So as it becomes natural, those beats just come out on their own. But where Mars did mate the Carthaginians, right? If you look up those words, where is a soft accent? Mars, it's a hard accent. Right? Did, soft accent. Meet, hard accent. One of the things about iambic pentameter that worked well in English and it doesn't work so well in other languages, this is a very English rhythm, is that our language is put together using lots of connecting words. So when you start using these words, right, these prepositions, articles, particles, things like that, they often don't take an accent. And therefore, what does take the accent?
The actual word.
Okay, the real words, the important words. What are the important words in a sentence? So parts of speech. Give me parts of speech. Verb. Say that louder. That's the most important word in a sentence. Second most important word? Noun. Right? So nouns and verbs get accents. The connecting words, or what we the endings of words like ed or ing that are added to words to set their tense up. Those words get less accent, and our natural rhythm of speech often falls into iambics, not because you get up in the morning and go, I'm going to speak iambically, but because if you are an English speaker, you're going to use words in this alternating form fairly often. Not always, probably not in five units, but you will tend to use this language. And after a while, if you read it like an English professor, in courts of kings where state is overturned, you can hear it. But of course, no one really speaks like that. But just saying it more naturally, in courts of kings where state is overturned, those rhythms are still there. In, right, little connecting word, courts, noun. Of, little connecting word, kings, noun. What's the next line? Where, little connecting word, states. State, noun. Is, little connecting word. It is a noun, it is a verb, but it's a helping verb. Right? That's actually overturn. Overturn. Right? You hear it there? Overturn. Right? This is just a line just at the top of the page, but it's a good example of how this works. In courts of kings, where state is overturned. Notice that every accent hits the more important part of the sentence. If I drop all of the unaccented words, you can still follow. What's important about this sentence? Courts, kings, state, and then overturned is a little tough, but you get the overturned. You get turned in there at least, right? So even in a multisyllabic word, overturned, these important words, courts, what are courts? Royal courts, right? Places where important people get together in this era where there's still kings. What are kings? Right? State. Right? Yeah, that is the political organization. And overturned. What happens when the state is overturned? Fallen, right? So in that one sentence, notice how the accents hit pretty important concepts. In courts of kings where state is overturned. That's a line about revolution. That's a line about changing the political order. And the accents hit the important, powerful words that have to do with the danger of revolution. Right? Not all iambic lines work out this beautifully, but that's just, I don't know, what's that, the fourth line of the play? Right? You can go through if you want, and you can chart these, and after a while you'll see that Marlowe's mighty line is not mighty because he invented the form, but it's because he realized that if you put the most important ideas around the rhythm, if you work with the beats of the line, you can get rhetorical effect. What's rhetorical effect? What would that be? You know what rhetorical effect means?
Like the implied effect?
Yeah, well,
Kind of.
okay, it could be implied. Sometimes it's less, it's the opposite of implied. Why would you want the beats on certain words?
It's how you deliver it.
Right? How you deliver it, and what happens when you deliver it that way?
Or is it understood?
Okay, more easily understood? Right? Somebody, let's see. Where's your book? Right. Which word did I accent? Which word did I swallow? I barely said where's your, right? Where is the little connecting word, right? What's the most important word there? Right? Put the accent on the book. That's a rhetorical effect. I didn't even have to say where's your, and I barely did. Where's your book? Right? 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 So the rhetorical effect of the accent well, that's what matters here, right? Okay? Right? The next, it's hard to do this, but I invite you, the next time that you encounter an emotional situation, try to listen to yourself and notice how you will automatically start putting accents on the words that bother you the most, right? That's why profanity works so well. It's already set up, right? It's, you don't have to say it, but in your mind, right? 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 And if you, remember a couple classes ago we talked about Anglo-Saxon words, right?
Yeah.
And we mentioned the F word, not that this is going to be a class about the F word, but that word has to have an accent, right? Right? Certain words have to have an accent. Interjections, when you're yelling at someone, they're going to get an accent. So what Marlowe does is when he takes the iambic pentameter line, he more than any playwright before him established how you can use that line to get a message across. How you can use that particular line to point the reader, if it's read, or the listener, if it's performed, to certain ideas just using rhythm. Right? And because we're used to that rhythm, it's not so obvious once you deliver it naturally, but that little sound, that little heartbeat, that's your metronome. And if you get in sync with the poetry, and if the poetry gets in sync with your body, and it's delivered well by a good actor who understands it, and knows what they're saying, and you're engaged, it can have a powerful rhetorical effect. It can make you understand the words that you make. That's why sometimes you can bring school kids to a Shakespeare play, and they can't read it, but they can follow it. Now, of course, part of that is because you also have set, you also have music, but also because a good actor can take this Renaissance English and give it a natural feel that actually communicates without ignoring the fact that it is indeed written in poetry. It's written in a certain kind of way. All right, so between the heroic couplets and blank verse, which one do we see in the entrance of the chorus? This is actually a pretty easy question. If you remember, what is blank verse? Unrhymed. So is this speech blank verse?
Yeah.
Yes, right?
Except for one.
Okay, look at the very end of the speech. You're on page 296. Right. Marlowe loved to do this, and Shakespeare learned to do it probably from Marlowe, and then there's a couple of playwrights who like to do this, Thomas Kidd, for example, is write a good chunk of the speech in blank verse, and then to really make a point, put a couplet at the end. And you see this fairly often in a long Shakespeare speech. Often in soliloquies, it'll be in blank verse and a couplet at the end. The couplet at the end, of course, is 2 lines of iambic pentameter with the rhyme that makes it a couplet. So the last two lines, right? It's a slant rhyme, but it's close enough, right? Line 25 there on page 296. He surfeits upon cursed necromancy. And notice how the editor makes sure you see where the accent is, because cursed would not have been spoken that way in the Renaissance. They would have said cursed. It would have said blessed. The ED could have an accent right there. Cursed necromancy. Nothing so sweet as magic is to him, which he prefers before his chiefest bliss. Hear that? Which he prefers before his chiefest bliss. Noun at the end of the line. And this the man that in his study sits. Listen, sit, slant rhyme, close enough, kind of locks down the rest of the speech. So when you read Faustus, you'll see a mix. You will also occasionally, no markers, so hold on. You will also occasionally see prose. Flip over. Page 301. We have two scholars. They're talking about Faustus. This is Act 1, Scene 2. First scholar, I wonder what's become of Faustus, right? What's going on with Faustus, where he is. Second scholar, that shall we know, for see, here comes his boy. That's a little awkward. See, here comes his boy. It gets back into the middle. And then servant comes in. Notice how the servant speaks, especially look at the big long speech in page 301. Who can do that? Servant, page 301. Please. That big speech that begins on line 19, page 301.
Yes, sir, I will tell you. Yet, if you are not princes, you would never ask me such a question. For is he not, or is not he corpus naturale, and is not that mobile? Then, wherefore should you ask me such a question? But that I am by nature phlegmatic, slow to wrath and prone to luxury, to love, I would say, if were not for you to come within 40 foot of the place of execution, although I do not doubt to see you both hang the next sessions. Thus, having triumphed over you, I will set my countenance like a procedure and begin to speak thus. Truly, my dear brother, my masters within at dinner with Paulus and Cornelius, as this wine, if it could speak, it would inform your worships, and so the Lord bless you, preserve you, and keep you, my dear brethren, my dear brethren.
Good. All right. How is Wagner described by the two scholars when he comes in? Is he referred to as boy? And how does Wagner refer to Faustus? Is what? So what can you figure out about Wagner's status? Yes, servant, lower. Oftentimes in Renaissance drama, the playwright, and Marlowe is no exception, will use prose to indicate a couple of different things. The first and most important and most common one is that this is a lower class person speaking, because the lower class people wouldn't be capable of speaking in this, rhythmic, poetic language. They're often given prose speeches, right? So if you think about plays you have read, notice that your Dogberries, your wood mechanicals, your guards, your clowns, your fools often use prose, right? So this is an attempt to show Wagner is not as, and does not have the same status as Faustus, and so he's going to speak in prose. Right? Second is informality. Sometimes it's a conversation that's not very public. When the chorus marches in at the beginning of the play and tells you all that's going to happen, just like you see in the Greek play we read, Bacchae, that's a very public moment. The chorus is formally addressing the audience and therefore uses blank verse. Right? Faustus, making his great speeches in this play, will generally use blank verse. But when you have prose, that's an indication that either the character or characters in question are not high status, or if they are high status, they're relaxed. They're not on performance. They're not making a big speech. They're not trying to make a big point. The scholars, for example, you look at the page, are not really trying. I'm not sure there's a really clear blank verse line in that whole scene two of Act 1. What didst thou not say thou couldst see? I don't even think that works. So this is a lower setting in terms of rhetoric. There's no reason at this point to use that heavy, strong rhythm. So you'll encounter that as well. Occasionally, you'll see another rhythm. Sometimes when the playwright wants to speed up the rhythm, the playwright may drop one of the metrical feet and just go with 4 accents. That's called tetrameter instead of pentameter, because tret 4, as pent means 5, and it will speed up the rhythm. If we shadows have offended, think but this and all is mended, that you have but slumber here, right? Only 4 accents, right? A little quicker. Last speech of that play gets you out of there. If you look at that play, you'll see that the fairies often speak in tetrameter instead of pentameter, because pentameter is the more formal, longer lines. A smaller, a shorter line quickens the pace. It's more playful. It's more fun. And often when combined with the rhyme, it makes it sing-song, right? Da-da-da-da-da-da, 4 instead of 5. Quickens the pace. Every once in a while, the poet Marlowe, in this case, might do a couple things. First of all, you might see a substitution where there's an extra beat in there. That's not particularly significant in terms of meaning, but often it's just a way to vary the lines. So, you're going, it's 5. You're still back in the rhythm by the end. Feel that? Do, 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 do. Just getting that little beat in there varies a little bit. We see that occasionally. And sometimes Marlowe might just put an extra word in there because he needs to. He might have been in a rush. He might have been sloppy. He might have been on the run. If you read your introduction, you know a little bit about Marlowe's life. Was he a boring guy who sat in the room writing his plays? No. Scalawag. Bad guy. Could have been a spy. Was most certainly a forger. Was under indictment when he was murdered in a bar. We're not even sure what he was under indictment for because the records don't tell us. But there was a warrant out for his arrest, and not just a regular old warrant like, hey, you didn't pay your bills. A privy council warrant, which means that the king wanted to see, or at least the king's ministers needed to see him. So he did something pretty heavy to have a privy council warrant. It's not the same as a warrant for not paying your parking ticket. That's like grand jury, the feds want you kind of warrant. So if you read a little bit about Marlowe, you know that he was not the kind of poet who just come back and lived a quiet, contemplative life. He was exiled at one point, and stuck back in the country, and was stabbed in an eye, bar, by a guy named Ingram Fraser.
Classic Ingram.
Ingram Fraser. We're not even sure over what. Some people claim that Marlowe was a spy for the British government, and this was some kind of information deal gone wrong. Other people think it was a simple barroom brawl between 2 guys who were mouthing off at each other. Marlowe was often in fights or in the middle of getting into a fight or running from a fight, so he was not a guy who was capable of starting a fight. And unfortunately, he died pretty young, I think 29. So at that point, he didn't get along. Yeah, we missed out on one place from Marlowe. It's too bad because this is probably his last play. And then there's a play we don't even have. We just have pieces of it because we just don't have the actual script. So unfortunately, there's not a lot of Marlowe, but what we have with him is pretty darn good. And important to read for his own sake, but very important to read because it lets us understand the context of what's going on.